inside look to Eckerd Connects.
What's going on, everybody? It's Mr. Roy.
And I'm Miss Cat.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest right here. His name is David Dennis, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Eckerd Connects, one of the nation's largest nonprofits organizations providing workforce development, job corps, juvenile justice, substance misuse prevention, child welfare, and various family services across the country. We got somebody big, guys. Just get ready till you hear his story.
Yeah, and we just want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
It's my honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, David, please tell us what your story is and what molded you to become the man that you are today.
Wow. This could take a while. You know, as long as I'm breathing, I consider my story still being written. But I'll share the part of it that part of what's been written so far, and maybe a few moments that I would call molding moments in my past. You know, I think probably first of all, Roy and Kat, it's for me, what makes my journey maybe most interesting is the odds against me being where I am right now, doing what I'm doing. I'm working with 43,000 folks a year that we're trying to help find a pathway to wholeness and health and success and build a pathway out of poverty through employment and have happy, safe lives. And that's exciting to me. And I came from beginning as a child, very much like many of the clients that we have the opportunity to work with and serve every day at Eckerd Connects. And so I think maybe that's probably one of the most interesting things as I look back on my life. When I was, by the age of 5, I lost my dad, my mom, and my only sibling. So everything in my life and any of our lives that's supposed to be what we would think is permanent, got stripped away before I turned 5 years of age. It was a pretty traumatic time. My dad died. Our mother had a hard time coping with his death and turned to alcohol to self-medicate to get through the stress of all that. It was her second husband she had lost tragically at a pretty young age. She was from a very impoverished background herself, abandoned by her own father, kind of raised by her siblings and the neighbors, was very young when she got married. She had no high school diploma or any other education or training, so she didn't have a very good support network whenever he passed. And so over that next year after he died, she continued to decompensate. And after a while, Child Protective Services stepped in, removed my sister and I, placed us in different homes. And that all happened by the age of 4, 5, about 5, I guess. And about that time, we got a second chance, and family reunited my sister and I. I was 5, my sister was 7 during my 5th year, and they're almost 6, I guess. And so we got that second chance a lot of kids don't get, and got raised in another home. And so that was probably the most significant molding moments of my early childhood. And so I think most of us are molded by two things, our past and what we envision to be our future. And so as far as those experiences go, while they were very difficult and very traumatic, you know, one of the things I'm a big advocate of is kind of harvesting what you have. And so it was really out of the pain of those experiences that some of the greatest things that I feel like I carried into my adulthood were given to me. And for me, those were, one, I learned at a very early lesson before the age of 5 that there are no sure things in life. I think that's one of the most important lessons for anybody to learn. It's just the way it is. And so that was a very important lesson. The second lesson, or two things that came out of that for me was that I have a sense of gratitude, kind of an overwhelming sense of gratitude, because I did get that second chance, and because I saw as a young kid how unpredictable life can be and how there are no sure things. That was a great lesson to learn. Many people haven't learned that lesson as adults. And so learning that lesson so early on really caused me to never take anything for granted. It caused me to live my life with a very high degree of high sense of urgency, because I never take a day for granted. I'm grateful, really grateful for every day, for every opportunity that I have. My kids will tell you they never are in my presence that I don't get a hug, and because I often remind them I may not be here tomorrow, you may not be here tomorrow, so I don't take a day for granted, and I've lived that way most of my life. Some of my staff that work closely with me every day would probably resent that I learned that lesson so well, because I do live with a lot of urgency, and I try to squeeze all I can out of every day, and I'm always pushing, and because I want my life to count, and I want to take all those lessons I learned and make good out of them. So that's probably the biggest shaping events in my life, in my past. About the age of 19, I really, though, came to a point in my life that, my teen years were tough. I didn't make all this processing happen in those years. I was really struggling with what all happened and trying to make sense of it. When you go through a lot of abandonment as a kid, everybody reacts to that differently. But for me, it caused me to have a real high need to be accepted, to be included, to feel a part. Your greatest fear when you've experienced extreme abandonment like that, you never want to feel that again. So unconsciously, you find yourself living your life in a way that you hope causes you to never feel that again. So because I wanted to be liked and I wanted to be a part of things and be a part of the crowd and be accepted, I did a lot of really stupid things that I really regret a lot. Hurt a lot of people, uh, just a lot of regret. I have several friends that didn't even make it through those years. My next door neighbor and one of my best friends as a kid, my last conversation with him was he was on death row. He couldn't get out of drugs, and all that stuff starts as a party and an experiment and a fun time and all. But several of my friends, started experimenting with those kinds of things like I did and never could pull out of it. He ended up robbing a place and getting shot, and ultimately shot a lady and killed her during that event. And it was a tragic event, and gratefully he got his life turned around in prison before he died. But you what happens to all of us when we're born, uh, none of us chooses who our parents are, right?
Right.
We don't get to choose. No, nobody. And maybe you and Kat had something to do with getting to Earth. Did either of y'all plan your arrival?
Nope.
Nope.
Did
Yeah,
not.
well, I didn't either. I've never met anyone my whole life, that could say, yeah, I decided when I'd come, who my parents would be, and what my zip code would be, and where I grew up, what neighborhood I was in. I've never met a person that chose their parents, where they lived, none of that. So we all show up in life, and including our birth and who we were born to, our parents, our family, our neighborhood. Uh, Once again, there's no sure things in life, even with how it starts. So that being the case, life happens to us from the moment, even before we take our first independent breath. Life happens to us. And so as a kid, life is happening to you. And as life begins to happen to you, you begin to react to it. You begin to formulate a belief system and a value system and thoughts about things. And you begin to develop thoughts about what parents are like, or authority is like, what life is like. Is it fair? Is it not fair? It depends on what your environment is. So I began to live all of that out, and I was reacting to what I went through as a kid, and they weren't good reactions. And I was doing very self-destructive things, and things that I really regret, like I said, and almost self-destructed because of it. So at some point, though, we all come to a point in our life where we have to say, okay, as a kid, these things all happened to me. Now I've got a choice. I can either decide to be a victim to all those things that happened to me and let whatever belief systems and value systems I created about life and my worldview, I can either let that be created as a reaction formation to events that happened to me. So that means I'm becoming a victim to what those events were, right? And I'm a product of my circumstances. Or I come to the point where I say, yes, all those things happened. That's true. And it felt really crappy, a lot of it. Um, But now I got to make a decision. I got to live forward the rest of my life on the rest of this canvas that hasn't been painted on, right? That stuff's been painted on, but I got a lot more that hasn't been painted in my picture. So I can either decide to keep living a reactionary life, kind of push through life by things behind me, painful things, frustrating things, things I'm angry about, things I don't understand, or I can decide, okay, where do I want to go in life? Where do I want to be? What do I want to be? What do I want my life to count for? And how am I going to respond to those things that happen to me that I had no control over? I can either allow them to define me and control me, or I can decide, no, as Kierkegaard said, life must be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. So I got to live forward. I can't go backward, but I need to have some understanding of how I got to where I'm feeling right now. So I can only do that by looking backwards. But now I got to live forward. So I decided in my life, I had to find a hope and a purpose for my life, not my past. And so for me, that was, I really kind of out of desperation began to seek what that purpose would be. And for me, I found that in my faith. I really out of desperation, I picked up a Bible and started reading it. And I was just looking for answers. And that was really a turning point for me. And it kind of gave me a sense of purpose, gave me a moral compass, gave me a direction. It also helped me to look at myself as the opportunity, not whatever's out there, not circumstances, not other people. It caused me to say, who am I becoming as a person, and not so much on what I'm doing or where I'm going. And I really began to focus on the kind of person I was. And that really became my top goal. And it's continued to this day. That's my focus, and so that was a game changer for me. And so my new vision for my future, I have a hope now, I've got a purpose, I have a vision for my life, began to drive my life forward instead of just reacting to my past. So those were the biggest molding moments, those early childhood experiences, what I learned from those, and kind of discovering a purpose for my life going forward. And the other thing it gave me was the ability to forgive people in my past that I had not done before, and to let go of some things that I was struggling with, I was hanging on to. There's certain debts in life you can't collect on, and so it's really a waste of time and energy to keep trying to collect on a debt that can never be paid, and that's a lot of what's in our past, right?
Yeah.
So it was very liberating for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. That's an amazing story. And I can see why you are where you are today. And to everybody that's watching, like Mr. Dennis said, no matter what your circumstances, no matter what you were born into, whether you're slipping or falling, you always got to get up. You can succeed and you can be a positive in this world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it.
Absolutely.
We get to decide who has the final word on that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Mr. Dennis, we're going to do our segment that we like to do. Are you up for it?
I'm game.
Okay, so we have a segment where we use a word or a phrase, and you talk to this guy right here.
Woo!
Or you see him? You see him? Check him out.
Whoa! Somebody said, did say the Bee Gees? Come on.
So you talk to your teen self with all the knowledge and everything that you know now. You will talk to him. Okay. So, Ms. Kat, you want to start?
Yeah. So your first word is struggle.
Okay. Struggle. Ms. Kat, you know where the word struggle actually came from?
I do not.
It came from the word wrestle.
Hmm.
And here's why that's important. Wrestling has been a big part of our family. We all of our boys wrestled, and several of them on into college, and it's been a big part of our family for many years. And wrestling is a great metaphor for life. And one of the great lessons I learned Matt's side watching our boys wrestle one day was this older guy beside the mat after all three of our older sons finished their matches, and they all lost, and their heads were down and they were bummed. And I think there might have been a tear or two. They were little kids at that time. He walked up and put his arm around them and he said, "Boys, if you ain't losing, you ain't learning." And so it was a great life lesson for them and for me. And what he went on to say was, if you guys only wrestle kids you can beat, you'll never advance your strength and your skill and your ability. The only way you get better is wrestling more talented kids that are tougher than you, more skilled than you. And in doing so, you learn what your weaknesses are and you get stronger. And so we never forgot that. So struggling, when I think of the word struggle, I think of stronger.
That's great.
Yeah, that's great. The next word for you is regret.
Regret. When I think of the word regret, I think of the word wisdom. Wisdom is a great teacher, but she often wears an ugly tattered dress, as the old saying goes. Wisdom is probably one of the best teachers, but like all of us, our hardest teachers were good, but it's probably a class you don't want to repeat. Usually they're painful lessons, but they're ones you never forget. So, but when I think of regret, I think never waste one, because they teach you invaluable lessons. Don't ignore them. A lot of people say, forget your regrets. I say, no way. Own those regrets, learn from those regrets, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. We have a more uplifting one, opportunity.
When I think of the word opportunity, I think of my favorite cat. Now, Miss Cat, you're close. My favorite cat is Garfield. Okay. And growing up, we had this giant poster in the bedroom where all our boys always stayed. And it was like life size. And I don't know if you've ever seen that poster of Garfield, and he's standing there and he's pointing at you. Have you ever seen that poster? You know what it says? Do you remember what it says?
No.
It says, you are responsible for you. So what I've got to say about opportunity is you are the opportunity, not your circumstances, not your environment, you're the opportunity. Always be finding ways to increase your value as a person so that you are opportunistic. That's what I have to say. Keep making yourself better, and you'll make the opportunities happen.
All right, great advice. You're killing it right now.
I've learned some hard lessons.
Yeah. Next one is going to be gratitude.
Gratitude. When I think of the word gratitude, I think of all the years in college and graduate school that I waited tables. The word gratitude comes from the word gratuitous or gratuity. So for you teens that are watching, that's probably a word you don't use much, but it's a tip. So after you eat at a restaurant, your waiter or waitress or server is hoping they get a tip. And, if you've ever waited tables, those of you that are watching, I'm guessing some of you have, it's hard work. And you don't have any control over how many people are seated at the tables in your section when you're waiting those tables. And sometimes it gets crazy busy and you can't keep up with it all, especially when you're just learning. But even when you are experienced, you get behind. And you have those nights when you just never catch up. And we called it being in the weeds. And you only get paid based on how good your service is, because that's how good your tips are at the end of the night. Mm-hmm. But one of the most powerful feelings that you ever had as a waiter is when you knew you couldn't give good service, or you didn't give service to a table, and somebody was gratuitous anyway. And they showed gratitude for your effort. And they left you this big tip, and you're just like, you just wanted to run out in the parking lot and hug them. And because it really lifted you up and it made you feel good, because it kind of showed you some grace. And the great thing about gratitude is you don't have to like all your circumstances. I didn't like the circumstances I grew up in, but I was able to, as I look back on them and found the new direction for my future, go back and harvest what I was given. Out of everything I experienced, what were the things that I learned from that? And I was grateful for those lessons I learned, because having lost everything as a kid, as scary as it was, I've never been afraid of anything because of it. I've never felt like there was any situation I couldn't navigate. I've never felt like there was any situation I couldn't get through and I couldn't overcome, because I had to overcome so much as a kid. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but because I did go through it, it made me a very resilient human being, more resilient than most people. I have incredible confidence because I've been through so much. I feel like I can kind of go do whatever. I mean, so be grateful, find the good in things, even the good and bad things. And even when people don't treat you well, you're not a victim of those people treating you badly. Guess what? You get to decide if you leave a tip or not. Be gratuitous. Show people grace, even if they don't deserve it. Love them. You're the one empowered. All right.
I love it. The next one is happiness.
Happiness. When I think of happiness, I think of one of my favorite quotes of all time. And it goes like this: I don't sing because I'm happy. You want to finish it?
I'm happy because I sing.
You got it. That same guy has another quote that better explains it. And he says, the problem with most people is they try to feel themselves to new ways of acting instead of acting themselves to new ways of feeling. So what I have to say about happiness is happiness came from the word happenstance, which really originated from the word circumstance, which meant if your circumstances are going all great, then you feel good. But if your circumstances are kind of crappy, you feel crappy, which means you're getting back into that victim mentality. And so what I love about William James' quote is what he's saying is, you're the one in control of your happiness. You get to decide how happy you want to be. And you get happy by acting in a way that makes you happy. For example, I may not feel like going to the gym. And so if I listen to my feelings, I'm going to miss a workout. And I'm going to feel worse because I missed my workout. And I'm going to get out of shape. But if I'm thinking about going to the gym and I say, you know what, I don't feel like going, but it doesn't really matter how I feel. I'm going to, right now, I'm going to act myself to new ways of being. So I go to the gym, I work out, I get all these endorphins. I feel great when I leave the gym. So act yourself to a new way of feeling. You get to decide if you're happy or not. Don't let your circumstances or your mood decide that.
Beautifully said. Next one is vision.
Vision. Vision is one of my favorite quotes. I've kept it on a little plaque up on our fireplace mantle. I've been married for 33 years, and so I always want our kids to see this. And the quote says that only those who see the invisible will do the impossible. And what that means is this: to have a vision means that you're kind of reminded that everything in life that exists gets built twice. So whether it's the computer you're looking into or the desk that I'm sitting in front of, it exists right now, literally, physically, but at some point it was just an idea in somebody's head. So you got to see the invisible. And some of the things you think about doing in your life, you're thinking, how could I ever possibly accomplish that? Well, you may not literally today be able to accomplish it, but can you see it in your head? Can you imagine it? Can you begin to write about it? Can you talk to friends about it? Can you begin to read about it, research? Can you get a mental picture and get a vision of it? Because first you got to build it in your mind. You got to build it in your heart. And you got to build that invisible of it, right? But until you see that, you'll never build it for real. And so there's a couple of quotes I love. One of them says that without a vision, the people shall perish. That the opposite of the word perish is to thrive. So and the word perish means to kind of atrophy, or, to die out. That's what it means. So having a vision causes you to thrive. It gives you energy and helps you become an overcomer. And so the first step is you got to see where you want to go. You got to picture it in your mind. You got to imagine it to be so. As a man thinketh in his heart, or a woman thinketh in her heart, so they are.
Awesome. All right. And then we have one more question for you.
Yep.
Do you feel that asking for help is a strength or a weakness?
It can be both. It depends on who you're asking. If you're asking advice and counsel from somebody that's not a good source of wisdom or counsel, you may get bad information. And so it could prove to be problematic. So you want to be thoughtful about who you're asking help from. Walk with the wise and you'll be wise. mixed with fools, you'll be misled and suffer harm. One of my favorite quotes. So who you're asking from determines that. Also, why you're asking. Are you asking for help because you want somebody to do your work for you, or you want somebody to solve your problem for you? If you do that and they do it, they prevent you from the struggle. And struggle means what? Strength.
You're learning.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, you're not getting stronger if you're not struggling. So if you're asking for help and somebody's like doing your work for you or enabling you, they're going to prevent you from that growth opportunity. So who you ask is important. Why you're asking is important, and what you're asking for. So I think that's a question that it could be good or bad. Certainly asking for help, if you're asking from the right people and for the right reasons, there's few things as important as asking for help. Asking for help is critically important. None of us make it in life alone. We all need each other, but it is important to decide who you're going to, you know, choose as your mentor and your example.
That's a great perspective.
I've learned some hard lessons.
Well, that's all we have on our end. We want to thank you again for being with us, David.
Thanks for letting me be here. It's an honor. I love what you all are doing to encourage and inspire and motivate other people. I'm humbled that you asked me to be a part of it. And thanks so much for all you're doing every day.
Thank you. And everyone who's watching, make sure to follow us at Mr. Roy and Miss Cat on Instagram, and also follow Eckerd Connects on all social media platforms.
And everyone who's watching, I want you to remember that you're worth it.
You're enough. Mr. Dennis,
Think
what
big.
would you like to say?
Think big.
Think big.
Yes.